Welcome to the Copper King Mine and Railroad. Today we're going to talk about the early Garfield Smelter, so stay tuned. Early Garfield Smelter, 1905. Construction started on the Garfield Smelter, August 1905. Now we have some great images of this early Garfield Smelter. I will show you as we talk about its history. Early Garfield Smelter would be the largest copper smelter in the world, size and magnitude, and remained so for a long time. As of 2014, the Garfield Smelter was the largest and most efficient copper smelter in the world. The startup construction date was 1905. Now this is interesting because both Utah Copper and Boston Consolidated Copper would not start open-cut mining at Bingham until 1906. They would be supplying the ore for the smelter. So the investors building the Garfield Smelter must have had a good idea that the open-cut mining was going to succeed, and it was the first time this method of mining copper was used. American Smelting and Refining Company that built the Garfield Smelter was heavily financed by the Guggenheim Exploration Company. The Guggenheims also financed Utah Copper, purchasing 232,000 shares. This was important because the large cost of the startup of open-cut mining at Bingham, and they also helped with the building of the new Utah Copper Mill at Magna. To ensure that the Guggenheim investment was sound, they sent their own engineer to Bingham Canyon Mine, Henry Crum, with assistance from 16 junior engineers, drilling their own test holes and extensive sampling, running 3,500 assays. The cost of the study was $150,000 and took 7 months. Their conclusion was that the mine contained an estimated 40 million tons of ore and the possibility of twice that amount. This report is what sparked the go-ahead on the 1905 smelter construction. The site of the smelter was selected by E.L. Newhouse. Now that's no relation to Samuel Newhouse of Boston Consolidated Copper. He was vice president of operations for Asargo, or American Smelting and Refining Company. The site is in the mouth of Kessler Canyon at the north end of the Oquirrh Mountains and the south end of the Great Salt Lake. He would say this is where the smelter will rise. The flumes and smokestack on the slope of the mountains will be the first thing constructed. The original smelter had 2 reverberator furnaces, 2 blast furnaces, 6 acid line converters, and 8 roasters. The reverberatory furnaces were hand-fired, coal grates. Then in 1911, it was oil-fired. In 1915, powdered coal was used, then finally replaced by natural gas in 1930. This revolutionary plant was fired up on Labor Day, 1906. It could handle 500 tons of concentrate daily. Now there was problems to overcome in the first years, but by 1910, the smelter was on sound operating basis. The Garfield Smelter construction workers building the smelter were mostly Greek, Slavic, Swedish, and Italian immigrants. The workers lived on site in tents. Later, the Garfield Improvement Company was formed. They built new homes for the smelter workers. The cost was shared between the Garfield Improvement Company, that was 3/5 of the cost. Boston Consolidated took 1/5 of the cost, and Utah Copper took 1/5 of the cost for building the community. The name of the community was either Smelter Camp or Slag Town. The contract American Smelting and Refining Company signed with the copper companies was the biggest in their history, valued at $5 million. It was a 20-year contract. Now, if you remember my video on Colonel Enos Wall, some of his disillusions on how Daniel Jackling was running Utah Copper, the contract was one of his complaints. He declared that Utah Copper was being milked by the Guggenheims to the tune of $3 a ton smelting fee, more than other copper smelters were charging. Walker resigned and sell all of his stock. January 2nd, 1959, Kennecott Copper Corporation took over operations of the Garfield Smelter, Sargo, for $20 million. This is the fourth smelter version on this current smelter site. The smelting process was completely changed 3 times, increasing efficiency each time. From 1906, then a complete renovation, 1961 to 1963. In 1974 to 1978, upgrades, and then again in 1995 to 1997, a complete rebuild. So that's some of the history of the early Garfield Smelter.